"Should we just cancel today?" Pete asked. "What are you talking about? Because we got this far, just to give up?" I was persistent. He was resisting his checkup, and I wondered, did he fear this new doctor? And you were telling Pete something at that instant, and well, I had to talk him back into an exam room. "Rachel, wait for me outside." "Are you sure?" I asked, feeling stressed. Finally, he told me it was fine after I got pushed out of the exam room on my own. A nurse came in and led Pete from the room. They left me there. "Mrs. Perry, this way, please." But then, oddly enough, the nurse said for me to go back in another room. "Well, what's going on?" I asked Room B with no words of hope hatang doctors. A doctor told him to run to the police. "What if you don't?" His words frightened me, and I jumped right on it. "My name is Rachel Perry, a 28-year-old homemaker. My husband is Pete, and our 8-year-old is Emily. Emily and I were pseudo-sisters, however. I had never been married before, and Pete was divorced with his daughter, Emily, from the old marriage." "Are you sure it's okay? I have a child and more me." Pete hesitated. "Oh, he's blind," I answered with a smile. "Born even as blind with the right eye one. Due to that, he protected his ex-wife correctly while they were in car accident. I met him through work. I used to write for web comics, and one day this storyline was presented as a comic idea. That was what Pete wrote the book on. Everyone, I should let everyone know that there are a few things you can still do if vive. Real, blind, which you can do. No, I have to stay with Emily and work." His emotions filling all the story, it explained when and how he lost his eyesight and what happened in life first. His words moved me so deeply I felt compelled to make a comic from it as soon as possible. "I got a message from the editor. The author of this novel wants to meet you for sure, and we met in more or less a denominator restaurant." Pete showed up with Emily, his daughter. His smile was soft, a presence of calm, and I easily fell for it. "I want to be your eyes and assist you." "And I've wanted to do the same with you. Your voice is so calming," he said. He fell in love with my voice, and that led us to dating. "Emily, would you mind if I was your mom?" "Okay," said Emily, agreeing. We decided to get married. My parents had their concerns about Pete, a blind man with his own child from another marriage. But they ultimately supported me. "Correct, but remember that the three of you can always count on us." They appeased me just before allowing me to go in peace into this marriage. "Emily, dinner's ready." "Thank you very much," Emily replied politely. "We've been living together since we started dating, but she hasn't opened up to me yet." "Well, it can't be helped. It's not easy to instantly accept a woman, once a stranger, as a mother. I hope she'll come to accept me in time." "Wow, that smells good," Emily said just as Pete walked in, guided by the wall. Startled, she flinched. "Pete, are you okay?" "The table is this way," I said, concerned about Emily but needing to assist Pete. In that moment, Emily had left for elementary school. By the time I turned around, she was gone, and I could only hear the door closing. Sighing, I remained thoughtful. "Something wrong?" Pete asked. "Sorry, I was just thinking about how hard it's been to get closer to Emily," I explained. Pete looked a bit troubled. Seeing that, I quickly tried to explain myself. I understood it wouldn't be an immediate acceptance and believed it would surely be resolved over time. "Thanks for caring. Maybe Emily is still wary of the idea of a mother." Julie Kelly, the ex-wife and the real mother of Emily, left Pete and their daughter behind when she found out he was blind. Emily might be harboring such thoughts and is likely wary of me as I try to become her new mother. "That's what I suspect," Pete said. "Sorry, but I ask for your patience." "Of course, that's my intention," I said with a smile, even though I knew he couldn't see it. "Thank you," Pete said with a smile. "Shall we have breakfast? Let's eat well and get ready for work." "Sounds good. We both work from home, but have separate offices to keep to our own schedules. Rachel, are you going to be cooped up in your room all day?" "Yeah, I plan to." I'll only come out for meals." "Got it. Just don't overdo it," he said. I nodded with a smile and headed to my office. I wondered what kind of work Pete was doing. We make it a point not to interfere with each other during work hours. I didn't know what Pete did during his work time. He used to write books using Braille, but I hadn't heard anything about that lately. Well, my earnings are enough for us to live on, so it's not a problem. There must be struggles I can't even imagine. I think it's enough just to watch over him. With that thought, I decided to focus on my work. A few days later, I drove with Pete to a hospital that takes several hours to reach. "Rachel, I know you're busy, but thank you." "Don't worry about it. I just want to help you." Honestly, it would be better to go to a major hospital closer to home. However, I insist on this particular hospital. There's a childhood friend of mine working here as a doctor who knows my situation well. Pat reconnected with his childhood friend during an accident when he was brought to this hospital. Since then, she's been very supportive, even after his ex-wife Julie left him and their daughter behind. That's why I've decided she should be the one to see me. The doctor is a woman. Yes. I had always assumed this childhood friend was a man. Finding out she was a woman made me feel a bit uneasy, even though it's just a medical consultation and their relationship is strictly doctor-patient. The fact that he goes out of his way to see a female childhood friend for hours bothers me. "What kind of person is this childhood friend?" I asked. "She's kind and gets along well with her husband. Knowing she was married put me at ease. Married people are less likely to do anything inappropriate." We then entered the hospital together. "Is this the first time we meet, Mrs. Perry?" Anna West, the attending doctor, introduced herself with a gentle smile. She was very beautiful and definitely seemed kind. Being a wife can be tough, and adjusting to a new lifestyle can be tiring. "I'm here to listen if you ever need to talk." I felt ashamed for almost being jealous. What a reliable, kind person. I had such an impression of her. "Shall we exchange contact information?" When Anna suggested it, I happily agreed. However, that might have been a mistake. Oh, a message from Anna that night. A message from her appeared on my phone. "Are you and Pete really doing okay? Pete has it tough. You need to be strong." What is this? The content was puzzling, not something I expected from the doctor I met earlier in the day. I consulted Pete without thinking. She's always been overly protective, trying to be a big sister to me. That's probably why she sent such a message. According to Pete, she has always acted like Pete is my responsibility. She was very worried when he remarried, especially because of Julie's situation. That might explain why she was a bit cold to me. If she sees I'm living happily, she'll probably be reassured. "Then I better make sure we are happy," I said with a laugh. "That's right," he laughed along. Emily watched us, seemingly wanting to say something. "Emily, is something wrong?" "Nothing," she said. When I asked Emily, she glanced briefly at Pete and shook her head. "I'm going to bed early." She then went to her room. I wish Emily would smile a bit more. I overheard Pete mutter. I turned to him, and Peter turned his head. Seeing him like this, I felt a slight discomfort. "Can you tell Emily's expression? We're family after all." "I can tell by the sound of her voice," he said, smiling. "It makes sense. After 8 years together, he might indeed sense her mood from her voice alone. But why could he respond to me turning around silently? Just a coincidence. Something wrong, Rachel?" "No, it's nothing," Pete asked with concern, possibly sensing my distress or wondering why I had fallen silent. I shook my head. "I'm probably just overthinking it," I convinced myself. "Well, Rachel, on a day off." Surprisingly, Emily initiated a conversation. Surprised, I managed to keep a smile on my face so she wouldn't notice. "What's up?" "This when Dad isn't around." She handed me a piece of paper. I took the paper from her. "Please make sure Dad doesn't see this." She left hurriedly. I heard the front door close, so she must have gone out, probably to a friend's house, as she mentioned earlier. "What's this?" Anna was a certain number. "Rachel, has Emily already left?" As I pondered the meaning of the number, Pete called out to me. I quickly put the paper in my pocket. Yes, she's already gone. It seemed a bit hurried. Isn't that more childlike? I hope she can act that way in front of me someday. That would be good. He chuckled at my words. He didn't seem to notice what I had hidden. What's up with you, Pete? Aren't you off today? Typically, Pete rests until nearly noon on his days off. I hadn't expected him to be up this early. I was thinking if it's not too much for you, maybe we could go for a walk together. Pete invited me with a gentle smile. That sounds nice. I want to feel refreshed. You're such a hard worker, Rachel. Just don't overdo it. He probably thinks I'm busy with work, but it's not work that makes me tired. It's the messages from Anna that are tiring me out. Don't bother, Pete. Since then, her messages have kept coming. It's okay. We're supporting each other. At first, I replied, but as the messages became daily, I started to ignore them. It's been a while since we went for a walk, hasn't it? Yes, it has. During the walk, I memorized the number Emily had given me and disposed of the paper, hoping I wouldn't need to use that number. A few days later, it was time for Pete's regular checkup, and I drove him to the usual hospital. Isn't Anna off today? Yes, she's caught that contagious disease that's going around. The difference this time was that Anna was off. However, there were other competent doctors, so we saw one of them instead. It was good that our long trip wasn't wasted. I thought so, but Pete seemed to feel differently. If she's not here, maybe we should call it today. What? He suddenly started talking, and I turned around without thinking. What are you talking about? It's just a routine checkup. We have to go through with it. Besides, we've come all this way. Let's make the most of it. Hearing that, Pete made a face of displeasure. I urged him and made him sit down in the waiting room chair. Can't we just skip it today? What are you saying? We're already here. Just give up. He was particularly reluctant about the checkup today. While I persuaded him, I wondered if he was nervous about a new doctor. Then Pete's name was called, and I helped him as we headed to the examination room. Rachel, wait outside for me. Are you sure? Just take a rest while I'm getting examined. With that, I was pushed out of the examination room. As I waited in the waiting room, Pete soon returned with a nurse. Mrs. Perry, this way, please. For some reason, I was the only one called by the nurse and was taken to another room. Well, is there something wrong? In the separate room, I cautiously asked the doctor, go to the police right now. What if you don't? You'll end up being used and then harmed. I was stunned by the words he uttered, and to act immediately, I started moving. After a while, Pete contacted me on my phone. Rachel, where on earth did you go? I'm at the police station now with Emily and Julie. Pete, taken aback by my words, remained silent for a moment. Why? He murmured in a faint voice. Dr. Watson told me about your situation. At that time, the person who revealed the truth was Dr. Marcus Watson. Pete, can you see what I'm saying? Moreover, he's not the kind-hearted person you think he is. Dr. Watson, who had called me in, told me this. His words honestly left me bewildered. I understand it's hard to believe, but haven't you ever had any suspicions yourself? As he said this, what came to my mind was Pat's recent behavior. He reacted immediately to my actions, even though he was supposed to be blind. He moves around our familiar home without any help and gets dressed perfectly. What bothers me the most is his relationship with Emily. Emily is always conscious of his gaze, and whenever I talk to her, Pete quickly intervenes, as if he's monitoring her movements. There are indeed some worrying signs. He's showing you a false persona. He's conspiring with Dr. West to deceive you. Indeed, if Pete's blindness were a lie, it would be odd for Anna not to notice. Perhaps she's been helping him because they're childhood friends. Anna and Pete are having an affair. What? It seems Anna was helping Pete, not just because they are acquaintances, but because they are in a relationship. The more I heard, the more I learned that their affair began around the time of Julie. She had realized it since Julie was a nurse and had consulted more closely with Dr. Watson and others about it. Just as Julie was about to confront them, I heard that Julie and Pete were in an accident. Those words gave me an awful feeling. I hate to think it, but I believe Pete was involved in causing that accident. Dr. Watson told me firmly afterward that she went back to her hometown, and we've lost contact. I hear that Emily was taken in by Pete. Yes, she's actually living with me now. It seems likely that Pete took in Emily to assess child support and to gauge how much truth she knows. He probably came to check on me while I was talking to you because of that situation. Emily must have sensed it too, which is why she kept her distance from me and tried to escape from Pete. Honestly, I can't believe it, but there are parts that I do understand. I wish we could get in touch with his ex-wife, but it seems she's changed her contact information. His words reminded me of a number Emily had given me. Actually, Emily gave me a certain phone number, so I decided to call that number to find out the truth. As I expected, it was Julie who answered the phone. When I told Pete this, he fell silent. Ignoring Pete, I continued the conversation. It seems she was under surveillance from your parents. Still, she wanted to keep in touch with her daughter, so she gave Emily a contact number for a phone you didn't know about. Emily herself doesn't have a smartphone, and since Pete is watching the landline, she couldn't use it. I was the only one she could likely contact. That's why Emily gave me the phone number. Being a nurse, she's very observant. She found a time when your parents' surveillance was lax and escaped. What are you doing? Pete's voice was irritated like I had never heard before. It seems his true nature had been revealed. I immediately contacted Emily's school, and now we are all at the police station. A mother and daughter are having an emotional reunion right in front of me. Seeing them together almost made me cry. Stop meddling. What's meddling about this? I did what any decent person would do. Thank you so much. Both Julie and Emily told me, crying. What I felt then was intense anger. Anger at the selfish reasons for separating a mother and daughter, at the deceit committed for personal gain. The novel that had moved me was all based on lies. Knowing this fact, I was so filled with anger and shock that I went numb. She has evidence that your parents can find her, and if we have Dr. Marcus Watson's medical report, we can prove that the disability benefits you were receiving because you are blind are fraudulent. Why would you do that? Weren't you enjoying our life together? Indeed, I had felt happiness in our life together. Above all, I married Pete because I loved him. Yes, and you were laughing at me, weren't you? With that, Pete fell silent again. Before going to the police station, I stopped by his house and peeked into his office. I thought maybe I would find evidence of infidelity. What I found was that you were not working at all and were just teaming up with Anna to make a fool out of me. That's the message that described me as obtuse and naive, easy to manipulate. Why did you choose such a woman? For the money. I was chosen because, as a webcomic artist, I was making good money. You thought it was simple to move me with your novels. I was really underestimated, wasn't I? It can't be helped, he said. What can't be helped? I pondered this. He started talking without being asked. I really didn't want to do this, but I desperately needed the money. Besides, the only person I truly love is Rachel. Do you think I can believe that? You even plan to get rid of me. What, sir? That too. Yes. Besides the messages with Anna, he had made arrangements to eliminate me. Pete, who had been living a luxurious life without working by taking alimony from his ex-wife, couldn't forget such a lifestyle and was looking for a new source of income. It was me. As a web-comic artist with earnings and working from home, it was easy for Pete to keep an eye on me and make it look like an accident once he got bored of me. Is it right? I asked. That was just a joke, he replied. I wasn't serious, I said. It didn't seem like a joke to me. That's why we all rushed to the police. I went to the police fearing for my life and to expose the fraud by Pete and Anna. Emily was there to be protected from Pete, and Julie was filing a complaint for the defamation spread by her previous confinement and lies. It's over for you. The police are on their way to your place now." "Damn it," Pete muttered in panic at those words. "It's no use running away." I heard Dr. Watson's voice, indicating Pete had failed in his attempt to flee. "It looks like it's over." I hung up the phone after hearing the police's voices. The police were likely heading to Anna's place, where she was recuperating at home, and to Pete's parents' place as well. "It's all right now," I assured Emily. "Thank you for letting me see my mom," she replied with a beaming smile. Seeing her smile for the first time made me very happy. Later, I heard that Emily and her mom really went back to Julie's parents' home. Her parents' home is a plane ride away, making it difficult for Pete to reach them. "Leave that man to me. I'll make sure he faces the consequences," I reassured them. It seemed to give them some peace of mind. Emily and her mom returned home with smiles, while Pete ended up in the care of the police. The plan to harm me had not been executed yet, leading to insufficient evidence. However, the matter of the benefits and Julie's situation was judged as malicious, and Pete was given a prison sentence. "Is that so?" "That's good to hear," I said. Today I met with Dr. Watson to report about Pete. When I reported it, he smiled in relief. "What about Dr. West?" I asked. "She's been charged with writing false medical reports," Dr. Watson explained. Dr. Anna West's current situation was that she had been stripped of her medical license because of this incident. She was ousted from the hospital, and it was discovered that she had inappropriate relations with multiple patients and was taking supplies home without permission. The hospital was filing various claims against her. Furthermore, her husband had been informed of everything, and she was divorced without question. "Well, she brought it upon herself," Dr. Watson said. "Rachel, you were divorced as well, weren't you?" "Yes, of course. My divorce from Pete was successfully finalized. A lawyer mediated between us, and I blocked all contact with him. Thanks to that, I was able to divorce him without any issues." "I'm really glad we could at least help you," he said, smiling. It seemed he had been regretting not being able to help Julie before. Just as he was grappling with those feelings, he saw me with Pete. Because of that, he had been working behind the scenes, determined to help me this time. There was no evidence that Anna West and Pete were conspiring together, so I was waiting for the right moment to expose the truth about his eyes. To see through Pete's lies, I had to examine him first. However, Anna always took care of Pete herself and never let other doctors do it, so I was waiting for the right opportunity. Finally, it came. No matter how good his acting was, he couldn't deceive a doctor's eyes, he said, smiling as if he had accomplished a great feat. "I'm really grateful. If you hadn't told me the truth that day, I might not be in this world right now," I said, expressing my heartfelt thanks. "Thank you for trusting me," Dr. Watson said with a smile. Some time had passed, and I received a message from Anna on my smartphone. I had forgotten to block her. The message said, "My life is a complete mess because of you. You tried to take someone's life first. You have no right to complain." I didn't reply and just blocked the number. Currently, I'm back at my parents' house. They probably don't know where that is, so I should be safe here for a while. "Rachel, it's almost time for dinner. How's your work going?" "Thanks, Mom. I just reached a good stopping point." I smiled and headed to join my mom. Afterward, a piece of news became the talk of the town. It was about a famous webcomic author arrested for fraud. My webcomic had become widespread and was scheduled to be adapted into a TV program. However, it was discovered that the entire content was fabricated and the TV adaptation plans were scrapped. As the creator of the webcomic, I faced some criticism, but the editorial staff and the hospital defended me. So now, I'm seen as a victim who was deceived. When Pete gets out, he'll find he has no place to go. He had been deceiving everyone around him. Now he must face the consequences. Years later, after all that had happened, I had already left my parents' house, but that day I had stopped by to run errands. Then the doorbell rang. "Yes, it's been a while, Rachel. I've come to pick you up." Standing there was Pete, who had given up his act of being blind. I was relieved that I checked the monitor before opening the door. Without asking, he started explaining his situation. He had been arrested over the issue with Julie, had borrowed money to repay the disability benefits, and his parents had moved because they were shunned by the neighbors and couldn't return to their own home. "You're all I have left, Rachel. Let's be happy together." "No thanks." I flatly rejected his plea. Pete's face showed he was hurt. His attitude, as if he were the victim, was irritating. "It's your fault all of this happened. Don't you think you should take responsibility?" "I don't think so. I'm not responsible for any of this. It's all the result of your own actions, isn't it?" Despite my rejection, Pete still tried to cling to me. Exasperated by his behavior, I was about to call the police when someone called out to him. He turned around in surprise. "You, doctor." There stood Dr. Watson with an angry expression, accompanied by my parents. "Did you come to cling to her? That's quite pathetic." "Shut up. If you hadn't meddled in the first place." "I only did what was right as a doctor and as a person," Dr. Watson replied calmly, albeit angrily. Watching them, I called the police. "Your selfishness has inconvenienced many people. If anyone should take responsibility, it's you." "Dan it." Pete started to make a move toward Dr. Watson, but my father restrained him. My own dad sported a black belt in karate, and considering Pete had just spent the last few years going about life as though he was blind, one of his less harmful but not so usual wacky ideas, my father overpowered him with relative ease. "Dan it. Let go." Pete was shouting, but my dad wouldn't budge, thanks to the police I had called shortly before this. "Rachel, are you all right?" my dad asked. "Sure, thank you," I smiled back. Relieved, he smiled back. "She's safe with him," he told me. Our parents chuckled with knowing smiles. Val took the hint and pursued things with Jenna into another dimension. But as you know, whenever one door closes, an engagement ring appears. Oh yes, we went there. Pete and I seem to have a lot in common, the whole poor demando thing notwithstanding. So we got to that stage and, as you know a little later, shared the some true confession moment. Dr. Watson reassured to John over the phone, "Don't worry about her." My parents were against it. "We shall put our faith in you." Smile, "'Cause we are finally done, and now the moving stuff else spend this in our new home," I concluded. I was coming to give my parents a hand moving on Pete's time. Well, maybe just beyond the bend. But at least I did get to see my fiancé use his skills in battle next time Pete comes, even though he'll be forced into the realization that everything was pointless. "Oh, Watson," he murmured, "come here." My hand moved in the darkness to find his. It has been many years since then. It is my second marriage today. "Rachel, you are beautiful," Emily said. "Thank you," I replied. That was just for the ceremony. Emily and her mother were blessing us. That is one huge, contagious smile, and I may have missed out on being her mama, but seeing that wide-mouthed grin, then it will do. "Enjoy the day," Emily said. "Congratulations on your wedding," she said merrily, and I returned his smile with a real one of my own.